And we're live.
We're definitely crooked.
We're crooked?
We're
Oh!
la la la. Hello all, welcome. It is Wednesday afternoon, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and happy
Thanksgiving week.
Friendsgiving, you know, all the wonderful things.
I know.
I've done the Friendsgiving. The Friendsgiving's fun.
I like Thanksgiving.
You actually have to bring food or prepare food. I can cook. I'm not too bad. How about you?
I'm cooking. I cook pretty much most Thanksgivings. I'd say 80% of the history of my life, I have hosted the Thanksgiving. So there's some years I don't, but this year it's just us.
All right. So do you have like a specialty dish that you prepare? You know,
I will say that I do stuffing from scratch.
Stuffing from scratch.
Yes. And I even dry out the bread properly. You don't toast it. Drying and toasting are different. Proper stuffing is stale, dried bread, not toasted bread. So that's my thing. And I change it up. Like this year I'm doing 3 bread. So it's pumpernickel, challah, and sourdough. Whereas normally I just do sourdough, but I'm kind of
challah. How do you say it?
Challah.
Oh, okay.
You gotta get the
hock. You gotta hock it back.
And I actually really do love challah. And since this particular, and so I'm not using egg this year. The recipe that I'm going with this year doesn't have egg, and so I thought the challah would be like it would add like an egg flavor to an otherwise eggless dish.
Whenever I go to my awesome best friend's place for Thanksgiving, Jocelyn, usually there is this corn dish that's almost like a corn casserole.
It's a corn souffle.
Corn souffle. I love the corn souffle. That's a great side dish.
I'm surprised you like that.
Why not?
Because it's very fattening.
Well, fattening is okay. I just don't like anything to be too, well, Jen hates me for this, but
I do.
Anything that's too sweet.
I find it infuriating.
Well,
actually, no, I do. Like the amount of times that we've been places together or traveled or been somewhere where there is some amazingly good junk and I have to indulge alone. It is so unfun. And for people who don't, it's real, he's not fun to eat with.
No, I definitely.
He's really not fun to eat with.
I can pass on the cranberry sauce. I can pass on the pumpkin pie or the pecan pie or both, depending on which is on the table.
I don't know. This year I think I'm doing pumpkin cheesecake. We shall see.
Pumpkin cheesecake. You see, now that sounds interesting. That's something good. I might have to make an exception for.
It's very good.
Just as I make an exception for turkey.
Yeah, and normally I used to host in the last house. I would host anywhere from like 18 to 26 people given on any Thanksgiving. Like I was used to hosting big Thanksgiving, like have all the tables out and all of that. So for me to do Thanksgiving for 4 to 6 is kind of like a little lackluster. Although I am glad because my baby's home. And so there's been classical music afloat all through the house.
Well, aren't you privileged and fortunate?
To be able to listen to live classical music? Yeah, very. And I'm not even a classical music fan. I appreciate it. But I do love when my boy plays. I sit there and stare at him while he plays. He doesn't know that, though.
So for those of you who've been paying attention, there has been at least a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. How long that's going to last, my guess is that it will probably only last until the end of the holiday. And what that means for the innocent people of Gaza, we don't know.
What the hell does this holiday have to do with anything for them?
I guess that they don't feel good about committing genocide over Thanksgiving holiday.
They don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Well, no, I'm saying that we do because...
Oh, so the war profiteers... Okay, so the war profiteers need a little vacay, like right? They want to have they want to have good consciousness about when they genocide people. I hear you.
So for those who have been paying attention, and our wonderful guest Kyle Kemper, who is Mr. Kennedy Bus 24 himself, looking forward to having him on shortly.
Peter has so many questions.
I do. I do. I'm looking forward to it. But we do have an important topic that we have to cover at the jump. For those of you who may or may not know, Jen ran for the United States Congress in 2020 against none other than the very unbecoming ghoul herself, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She certainly brings the worst of the worst to the political arena, as we know. She just cannot unmask herself at the most inopportune times. Like in a moment when there should at least be an opportunity to breathe, because there's been over 14,000 Palestinian civilians, over 6,000 that are children.
I question the numbers. I think it's got to be way
as far as we're concerned, it's infinitely higher.
Like I honestly don't understand where those numbers. I just again, it's like I do the math in my head and I'm not computing it. But okay.
So Debbie decided to issue a statement last night regarding the release of 50 hostages, not all of them.
Which, by the way, we now know the appropriate Israeli to Palestinian worth ratio. It's how many to one? I
think it was 250 Palestinian civil hostages were released by Israel.
For how
50
50 to 250. So I'm really bad at that.
5-1. Okay, even though I wouldn't exactly agree.
Okay. So it's a 5.
No,
so at least we finally know. We
correct.
finally know that each Israeli is worth 5 Palestinians.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull up a tweet of, well, it was actually a thread of tweets that were brought up. Colin, I don't know if you have, I saw that it was on hers, and I don't know if you moved it around or something. I want to make sure that this is ready to go. So I
have no idea what we're looking at, but I have a feeling I'm about to be repulsed.
Yeah.
Do we have to see her face?
I found a statement. I couldn't find a tweet thread.
No, just pull up the tweet that she put out last night. The one that... that was put out at I don't know.
All right, but I don't have to listen to her.
No.
Okay.
No. I'm not going to do that.
I have to be way prepared for that.
The only tweet I see is this one on COVID.
No, keep going. No, you're looking at the wrong page. You got to go to her official congressional page.
This is her.
Oh, is there a different? That's not confusing.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe that there's 2 of them.
Like who would follow those both?
Well, sure. And of course, it's always interesting when you have 300,000+ followers, and then for whatever reason, you don't have engagement past 100 people.
And I wonder if those people are staffers and I think a lot of the people, it's sort of like how I feel about the K-Hive. I don't think it's real. I think it's a handful of people and a bunch of bots.
Yes. Well, I think that's
and that's what I feel about Debbie's people. And this is why I think this specifically about Debbie. And really, even if, let's say, I didn't even dislike her, her audience is much, much older. And so most of her audience is not social media people. That's what I would, and honestly, I would just question the amount of.
This is the statement that Wasserman Schultz decided to put out last night. 6 statements, and one gets worse after the other. I am deeply heartened by this initial agreement that is expected to result in the release of 50 civilian hostages, including women and children, and grateful for President Biden's tireless diplomatic efforts to free innocent victims of Hamas terror.
She cannot remove her head out of his ass.
And the idea that it was President Biden who was working so hard to get this done.
Yeah.
To be clear, While this brings a flood of relief for some, this must be the beginning of the return of all the hostages held by Hamas. This temporary cessation of, like she wrote that herself, this temporary cessation of Israel's just war will allow a much-needed surge in humanitarian aid to reach Palestinian civilians who have been used as human shields. Another lie. Another one presented right there.
I have a lot I want to say about human shields, by the way, at some point.
Didn't take long for that one. However, Israel can and must continue to eliminate terrorist capabilities in Gaza to prevent Hamas from ever perpetrating their genocidal terror.
That's in your mind.
Again.
That's in
the idea that she's using that word.
I honestly, seriously, this is what I think. When somebody even is so threatened by another group's freedom that in their mind it translates to their annihilation, you need to seek help for that, Debbie. You need to get some help.
This is the creme a la creme. I'm also thankful for POTUS that he did not heed calls for an immediate ceasefire weeks ago, as Israel could not have achieved this breakthrough had one occurred. A unilateral ceasefire only serves Hamas terrorists who broke a ceasefire on October 7th, that's another lie, and vows to do so again and again. So what you're saying is that we could have had a ceasefire at the very beginning, because as early as October 8th, the day after, the ceasefire opportunity was on the table for the exchange of hostages, but also denial of the occupation. This is the real kicker here.
I have so many problems with so many layers of this and her wording.
The justification.
Vile woman.
Knowing full well that at least 14, this is again on paper, that at least 14,000 civilians.
We're so going to
get
demonetized again. This is how we're going to get
demonetized again. Oh, who cares? Money.
Last time we called her out, we got demonetized. All right, whatever. I'm just saying.
14,000 civilians, over 6,000 children. And this is your statement? This is what you say?
Well, she only counts the Jews. In her mind, the only victims here are the Jews. She truly does believe that. And can I please, I am so angry again. This is why I don't like to start like this. I'm so angry. Okay. The people that use human shields more than anybody in the entire world ever that I've ever seen is the state of Israel. They actually, what do you think a settlement is? A settlement is putting people in an illegal occupation, basically where they're surrounded by very disgruntled indigenous people. If that's not a human shield, I don't know what is. Israel also takes students, high school students, I was one, and takes us into places. And meanwhile, they do send you with armed security. So you go to places with armed security, and they have you planting trees in occupied land. So those are human shields. I was a human shield. Everybody that is a settler in places they ought not be living is a human shield for the state of Israel. So the fact that she uses that, also, I don't like that they constantly refer to Hamas as terrorists. They're militants. They're militants that are occupied.
There are militants who act as terrorists, let's be fair.
No, they're committing terrorist acts.
100%.
They're committing terrorist acts, and I will say that. But people don't pay attention to the words they use. What they call terrorism, a lot of people call resistance fighting. It's all a matter of what side of the fence you're on.
But the idea that you want to completely gloss over what has been happening to these innocent children, much less innocent civilians, the idea that you want to highlight that 50 hostages have been released. So now apparently, according to the numbers, that means about another 150 are still in captivity. So does that mean that for every 50 hostages that get released, 14,000 civilians are going to need to be mass murdered?
I don't know what their number is, but I also have the hypothetical question is, how would you have reacted if the Hamas fighters
were?
Well, if they went and hid in the hospitals in Tel Aviv. Let's say they were hiding in the hospitals in Tel Aviv, in the basement in Tel Aviv. Somehow I think your strategy would be slightly different into how to get them out, because the reality is she sees this and only cares about, the 50 people being released. She has never given second thought to the 250 people that are being exchanged for, that have been being held in captivity without due process, without anything some of them for years. And they are women and children.
And it's also the same thing.
Shouldn't even mention that.
It's also the same thing regarding her statement about this all started because a ceasefire was broke on October 7th. Do you know how many Palestinian civilians were murdered by Israeli armed forces prior to October 7th in this year alone?
How about the ones in the West Bank?
750.
Prior to any of this.
This is not like...
And that's not, and like, what about the West Bank, what they've been doing since then? And that has nothing to do with Hamas. Take your racist, bigoted, Zionist tropes elsewhere. I cannot believe people are eating this shit up from
the
her.
only thing, the one silver lining I will say as we wind down
Crazy
this topic
bitch.
is that if you look at the responses, I mean,
Oh
this
God.
is an all-time ratio.
Like she cares about Palestinians.
All-time ratio.
Oh my God,
and if you go
pray.
and look at the people that actually liked this, you will see a significant amount of bots. You will see a significant amount of AIPAC supporters and maybe a few not so intelligent people sprinkled in who really don't have all of the information at hand. Fair enough.
But she's gotten annihilated from this.
Correct.
Good.
And the people that have come after her have been every walk of the political spectrum, every single one. And the reason why this story
so
has
she's
to be
getting slammed from all different people.
from every direction. Everybody has said she is the biggest ghoul in Congress. She is a heartless warmonger, which she is.
Oh, she's never. You know what? I wonder if she'd feel that way if one of her kids were enlisted. You know,
That's a good question.
Privileged, you white, racist, privileged woman. You know what? As a Jewish person, I find her to be the most despicable representation I can ever imagine for Jewish people. And the fact that she's out there and she constantly is out there playing the Jew victim card. She's such a victim. Oh my God, they're after us. See, the problem is with her, it's like, I know she's just lying. Because she absolutely knows the truth.
Well, when you take $600,000 in campaign money from AIPAC alone, this is the type of thing you're going to get. You're going to get these standard bearer talking points. She's the third highest recipient of AIPAC money after Richie Torres and Josh Gottheimer. So it's not really that surprising that she's making these inflammatory statements.
And she's a war hawk anyway. I mean, let's be clear. She's never been a war she didn't like.
But the other thing that you have to keep in mind, which I think is very important, and this really speaks to the big issue here, and this is why it's also just sort of happenstance we're talking with Kyle Kemper and obviously somebody who's following the Kennedy campaign very closely. The big problem here is that you have somebody who is Debbie Wasserman. There's no one doesn't know that Debbie Wasserman Schultz isn't Jewish, doesn't know that she represents the Jewish culture in the worst way possible, and is absolutely causing a shitstorm that is not helping the cause. It is not helping the cause. And on top of everything else, she dragged RFK Jr. to the congressional floor. The fact that Debbie sits on the Judiciary Committee and she's not even an attorney is unbelievable.
See, that doesn't bother me.
It bothers me.
Okay, but you shouldn't have to be an attorney to be in Congress, and anybody in Congress should be able to sit on a committee.
Listen, I don't disagree with that. I don't think you have to be an attorney to be in Congress. I agree 100%.
But
I
then
think
if
to sit
anybody can be
on
in
certain
Congress,
committees.
no.
All right, well,
I disagree. Whatever. And I'm pretty elitist about stuff like that.
But there are no lines that she won't cross. And the reason why it was so important that we brought this up is because the worst part about what Debbie has done, thank goodness she's been ratioed into oblivion by people who are really paying attention. Stuart Selbowitz has sucked all the air out of the room as the man who was caught on the Upper East Side of Manhattan going up to the Hallel Euro stands and attacking Middle Easterners as basically being rapists and animals and things like that. And so he's getting all of the attention, but while he did work in the State Department as sort of somebody who was supposed to be working on Israel-Palestine for 4 years, which is amazing, he's getting all the attention, but he's not in government right now. Wasserman Schultz is in government, and she pulls the strings on a lot of these heavy-hitting issues in foreign policy. So the idea that this just happened on the exact same day could not have happened at a worse time. I
look at her and I'm just, the more she steps out, the more people remember that she's still there. And it's not ever a pleasant remembrance. Like, it's not like people are like, oh, I remember her fondly.
Let's not keep our wonderful guest waiting. We had the opportunity, Kyle and I, to meet at the launch of RFK's presidential announcement in Philadelphia just over a month ago. And I have to say, I even said to Jen, there's something in the air with this campaign that I think people are really missing, that they want to pretend isn't happening. And if anybody can speak to it, it is the gentleman who has the RV that is traveling the country right now, speaking to everyday people about this campaign and what it means at this particular time. Without further ado, Kyle Kemper, welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Real pleasure to meet you. And I heard everything that was going on there, and I just want to let's just take a moment and just have a nice breath, okay? Because because we really need to, like, this is part of,
That's why I don't like them showing those things.
this is the plan, though. This is what they want to do, is to divide. And like, it was really interesting because it was October 9th was October 9th was the day that, he launched his independent bid. Bobby launched his campaign before that, but it was October 9th. And then, 10/7, this new situation unfolds, this new 9/11 unfolds, which has a lot of similarities to that. And, and I'll just say, I'm just sharing my own personal opinions here as we're discussing. And it serves to distract and divide. It's like people were coming together. The world was starting to come together towards the ridiculousness of funding the proxy war in Ukraine, and it was losing support there. So it's not like it was like, oh yeah, let's just flip this other switch. No, these events is all like a calendar that's planned, and it's like, how do you really divide people? And then agents, that lady you were just talking about. I don't even want to mention her name because
Please.
They are energy vacuums. They are meant to take your hate, and when you give somebody your hate, you're giving them your power. So it's like, don't give them your power. Don't even acknowledge them, because let's just understand, she's not a representative of the people. Technically she's an elected representative, but I don't think she listens at all to the people. That's why she gets ratioed on everything, and that's very reflective of the current state of Congress, House, county supervisors, state legislatures, up and down. It's the corporatocracy has its kind of it's of the party, by the party, for the party, of the corporation, by the corporation, for the corporation. And there's been this delineation and this removal of the basic human people representation. And that's ultimately what happens over time through centralization. And that's something the founders warned about in the very beginning was, the power of the parties. As they become more centralized, they will seek to put their will over the will of the people. And that's where we're at right now. We're dealing with peak centralization. We're dealing with this uniparty, two-party Republican Democrat, corporate machine. And Bobby has come along as this outlier who's saying, you know what, I don't believe that. And Bobby Kennedy is a blue rhythmic storm, according to the Mayan prophecies. And he is gathering all this energy and all these light workers and all these beautiful people. And does everybody agree on everything that he says? No, but he's very well qualified for this role. And when you can bring together, politics is more than just getting votes. It's also it's a talent contest too. How can you get the talent? How do you get the artists? How do you get the creatives? How do we come together for a shared vision, a shared purpose of humanity? And that's what really Bobby's I feel like he's pulling people together. And there's and so far I've seen it just by being on the road in my bus. People are tired. They're they want a new path forward. They want another option. And a lot of them aren't aware that, that Kennedy's running. But again, it's I think we got 300 and I don't know. I try to keep the day count, but I think we're probably 350 days away or something like that until the election. So there's a lot of time to still kind of wake up. The campaign is doing it's fantastic. Because we're not challenging the Republicans or the Democrats in their primary process. Instead, there's this new challenge of getting on all the ballots.
Right.
So there's state by state efforts to collect verified signatures, and we're going up against the corporate machine too. There's rumors that say the Biden administration is committing hundreds of millions of dollars towards hiring up all the signature gatherers, because people like that lady we were talking about, she doesn't have volunteers that on their own whim go out and collect signatures.
No.
They pay people to go collect signatures or forge signatures. Now, with Bobby and with a populist movement, you have people who want to actually help and participate.
That is
and
correct.
That's the great difference between corporate politics where you have to pay for everything. You get the cringiest, shittiest influencers imaginable to like make this cringe, like, it's just so fake and corporate, versus heartful activity and actions and love of people coming together and creating. And it's like, I painted my bus without like, I didn't know. No, I didn't ask for permission from anybody. I didn't request money from anybody to do that. I just went and did that. I was like, look, this is the time. I had that sense in my heart. I was like, gosh, this feels like kind of like, this feels like the Ron Paul movement again, in terms of like, the potential for bringing about real change and really opening up the issues that really warrant honest discussion. But the difference is, instead of like, sweet Dr. Ron Paul, who had zero name recognition and was just like completely ignored by the media, Bobby Kennedy he's got one, the name, two, the experience, the history, three, the charisma, like, he's got the family charisma and the ability to engage with others as well. So yeah, it's really like, it's the perfect storm, and it feels right, especially at this time as we're like shifting between these ages. Like we're at the top of the clock here, and we're shifting from this Piscean age into this Aquarian age. And I feel like Bobby's this blue rhythmic storm that is helping to aid humanity and moving from separation to ascension. So
yeah, I keep saying I wish there were no parties. Like,
right.
I know we talk about like the idea of multiple parties, but like my bigger question is, why do we need parties? Do we need parties? I mean, I understand having organizations that support certain things and support candidates, but like, I prefer none of the above.
I agree.
The father of our country specifically said that, political parties will be the death of the republic.
It's the problem.
So how we fix it is independence, and it's time. Like, you ran as an independent, Jen.
No, I had to. Well, no. I live in a district wherein the only way to oust the incumbent is in a Democratic primary. We have closed primaries and a very, very blue district. So the only way.
What district is that?
25.
Florida's 25th.
So it's the suburbs of Fort Lauderdale, basically.
Suburbs of Fort Lauderdale. So let's set the mission.
You're not running as an independent here. You'll get nowhere.
We're turning it independent next year. Let's figure it out.
I'd love for that to happen.
Let's set that intention. Let's get those votes.
But
And
the
thing is, we need to provide people with an option, because a lot of old Democrats, like old blue Democrats, feel a little bit lost with the current state. Because if you've been a Democrat for 30 years, the party is not the same party. It is like a very different. Now, there's also like a lot of hypnosis that's going on, a lot of programming of individuals. But the key opportunity for us now is not to focus on what was, but to focus on like, presenting people with that invitation to say, you know what? Thank you. Thank you, Democratic Party. Thank you, Republican Party. Thank you for the good, the bad, the ugly, the ridiculous, like the crazy. And it's time to say, I'm not interested anymore, and I declare my independence, and let's look towards new models moving forward.
We need ranked choice voting in order. See, these are things that I totally agree with, but like here, for example, we need open primaries and ranked choice voting in order for any non-duopoly candidate to have any chance.
One of the best.
Well,
and we need coordination amongst, because you've got like, your 1-2, and that's like, and then there's a primary to get that. Then there's like a selective primary to get that Democratic nomination, which is basically, you think it's a shoe-in. But then there's like, then you got a Republican, and then you may have like, 7 or 10 other candidates that are also like, splitting that other independent vote. So there is a real opportunity, like across the country, to try and unify that independent vote around a new path forward. And it might be, and I think at the end of the day, it's like, just recognize that no politician, it doesn't matter what color their party is or their non-party is. No one person represents you fully, like, period. No. End of story. Nobody.
Yep.
So it's like, to expect that this system of representative government is going to reflect the people. It's crazy. It's just not going to happen. So, we need like, I've got right, where was it? I was just in Denver at an international summit. I was talking to the Alliance Party, and they have like, this basically this code of conduct or this pledge or this oath that you take as an independent towards certain values. And it's like, we need these basic like tenets about like, being oath sworn towards serving your people and listening to your people. And then along with the technology that we have in play as well, like we don't need like some shitty corporate polls that are giving us some biased results versus, we can actually query the people when it comes to the legislative issues that are at hand. And we can also look towards, instead of letting politicians like talk and debate and discuss and deliberate and take lobbyist money and then execute legislatures, look at things like citizen assemblies to actually inform random selections of the population, almost like a jury duty style event, but to look at specific policy issues. So you can have a really informed, discussed output that can be used towards informing the legislative and actually taking it to the vote. So I really am hopeful and optimistic about, where things are going. And, as opposed to like criticizing by like, complaining, it's criticized by creating, be that change, set that ideal outcome of what you want to achieve, manifest, visualize, execute, and and do it in a truthful, gentle, fearless, beautiful way.
One of the best experiences we had here locally, and this is one of the hallmarks of local politics, where the whole concept of what Bobby's doing does make a lot of sense. We helped campaign for a local friend who ended up winning the mayoral seat in the town that we both happen to live in. And what we discovered is that because it's a nonpartisan race, you take it right to the people, and you could have the most vote blue no matter who, or the most MAGA red Republican. It doesn't matter. It's all about the candidate and the issues that they're fighting for, and they end up agreeing on the same candidate, which means that the two-party duopoly has run its course, and we need to evolve in that regard. And I think what Bobby is doing is essential. Regardless if you support him or not, you should support his efforts. His efforts are changing the political landscape in this country, regardless of where people stand.
I mean, I respect the fact, and we've talked about, we've covered his campaign a few times on the show. There's things I agree with, things I don't agree with. But as I've said, like if I were looking at an election right now between Biden, Trump, and Bobby Kennedy, I would vote for Kennedy.
There's nothing to think about.
And I know that that's a chunk of people. But given that we do have options, like, everyone knows, like I am a Cornel West supporter, at least until I'm not, for whatever reason, whatever. But I always appreciated that once he realized he was getting nowhere in the Democratic Party, that he's like, you know what, this isn't working. I'm not just going to fall in line with them. I'm going to go run as an independent. And I respect that immensely.
Which is something that
I think it's important.
Which is something that we wish that Bernie would have done back in 2016.
Oh my God.
Bobby is doing now what could have been. So I'm curious, Kyle, what was your political odyssey? What brought you to this point as a Bobby supporter? Obviously, you have the tour bus to drive around the country.
He comes off the Ron Paul train.
Well, there could be that, but
I always like Ron Paul.
I like Ron Paul too.
I don't mind Rand Paul. I'm about half and half with him.
Yeah.
There's things I like about him. Sometimes I think he's a freak, but sometimes he makes sense.
I think Rand's got a lot of good ideas.
He does. No,
so
and I
have
respect for him,
yeah.
but
But ultimately, what was it for you that brought you to this point? How did you get here?
Why don't you just quickly Google my name?
What? Okay. Do it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because that's interesting. What I'm scared to know now.
Oh, no,
what is going to happen? All that comes up is what's his name?
Justin. Wait, no. Is this really?
Really?
That's your brother?
That's your brother?
Oh wow.
Why am I copying what you're saying?
Well, no. It's
like, so you asked like what were some of the origin roots? It's not Justin's that my origin roots. He happens to be my brother, and I fall very, very far away from that because it's like, we talk about the situation of things, and I had a very eye-opening enlightenment on September 11th, 2001, when I was in grade 11. You know, I was very young, but watching this, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. What is going on here? And then, you know, 2003 or 2005, Luke puts out Loose Change. 2007, Peter Joseph puts out Zeitgeist. 2008, Ron Paul runs. 2012, Ron Paul runs. 2013, Bitcoin, or 2010, Bitcoin comes out. 2013, I learn about Bitcoin. You know, I dedicate my entire life towards crypto decentralization for the last decade. To 2020, the pandemic begins. I'm very early exposed to, you know, the fake virus, and then, you know, witness, like, you know, from a family side thinking, oh, like, you know, this is going to end real soon. Like, yeah, I think Justin thought this was just going to end real soon. I don't think he realized that he was about to, you know, get be handled worse than a, you know, a bull at a rodeo, in terms of how he's going to be used and abused. Yeah, so I've always kind of like been, you know, civically minded, civically engaged, and looking.
Where'd you grow up though? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Ottawa, Canada.
So how long have you lived here?
2020 was when, like, I was always spending a lot of time back and forth, but in 2020 it was like, okay, yeah, I can't travel back and forth between Canada so much, so let's lay it down, and then began the process for permanent residence here in 22. So yeah, that's
right.
the little story.
I find that so interesting. I know so many people that would rather escape from here to Canada.
Yeah, which they don't actually, they think that, but they like. They don't really.
Canada.
You gotta let that settle in. You don't know Canada, like what happened. Like a dark fog has settled in on Canada. That's what I noticed.
I think it's over the whole world.
But if you're talking, people want to like leave in Florida, leave to Canada, like come on, like, because in Canada, I'll tell you, they think Florida is like whoa, like especially during the whole scam. It was like, oh yeah, no, Florida, super deadly, super dangerous. People are dying in the streets. Like you can't go 10 feet without, like, you know, running into a super spreader. It's like, yeah, the governor is completely crazy. Like, just be blessed that we're here in Canada, locked into our rooms.
If only all the French Canadians that used to come up and take over Hollywood Beach felt the same way.
Oh, well, different province.
I know there's no accounting for provinces.
No, I mean, well, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this, Kyle, because obviously, you know, your brother is a lightning rod the world over at this point. Would you say that, you know, Canada's politics have evolved over the last several years, specifically because of the Trudeau administration? Or do you think that this was something that has been brewing for a long time and just got really accelerated? I was 1000% behind the truckers and what they were trying to do. What happened to them was absolutely fascistic. There is no getting around what that was all about. I don't care where you fall in the political spectrum. You have to have your independence. It's amazing what that word is just becoming so vital today. But that was a watershed moment where I thought, okay, for him, there was no coming back from that, because you basically said, I am on the side. I know,
but it didn't affect anything. It's like there's like they get a blank pass for everything. And again, Justin is the energy vacuum. Like, he is set up to suck in all of this hate from the truckers and the Canadians, when he is just a hockey player. Like, he's just the goalie. He's just the one player on the ice. Right, you know, talk about the managers, talk about the system, the coaches. Like, you know, there's a whole apparatus above him that is doing this, and it's not his administration. I mean, it's been a long journey. And Canada is just one of this, like, you know, this emergent corporatocratic new world order Serbian state that like, you know, leverages things like Ukraine to further transfer wealth out of the pockets of Canadians into the corporatocracy to further create this wealth gap. And then
We're friends with Carol Roth, and I'm actually in the process of reading her book right now. You will own nothing, or you will own nothing and be happy. And that's basically what has happened over the past several years. I mean, the economic system is breaking at the seams, and what happened over the last 3-4 years, it's really been, I mean, the cost of living is just so out of sight, out of mind. And there needs to be somebody who will step in. And this is why I've said specifically about Bobby that I think is more significant than people realize. And there are people in the chat who don't agree, and that's fine. That's why we have the democratic process of argue and debate and all that. But one thing can't be denied. Bobby is the only person running for president right now who has addressed the fact that in the United States by 2030, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street are going to own in excess of 60% of the single-family homes in the United States, effectively making everybody a renter and not being able to build generational wealth, hence making this plan, if you will, come to fruition, where basically you have a serfs class across the board. And the fact that he was willing to say that and is the only person who's been talking about it is very significant. And we've had people from all different spectrums of the political arena come in and say the same thing, which is not only are you not able to afford a home and build generational wealth, but these mega corporations have no regulations on them whatsoever. They have bought the homes and they're buying the government, hence completely destroying the system. And the fact that Bobby is talking about it is very, very significant.
Mm-hmm. And he's talking about CBDCs too, and how they want to use digital, he's speaking in support of Bitcoin and decentralized and competition within currencies, which is huge. He hasn't been speaking out directly to the Federal Reserve, its creation, its influence, the fact it's about as Federal Express, but give it some time. And but he's also proposed this idea of the 3% mortgage for actual individuals as opposed to the corporates, because the corporates, they're sitting on all the cash. They'll 20%, sure, they'll play that game. It makes it completely inaccessible for the people. So I mean, that's definitely, it seems to be the agenda towards serfdom and continued domination, as has been a weird fantasy and desire, let's say, of some of these people. But we must, it's I told this to Alex Jones during the trucker rally. It's Alex, you've done such a great job of showing what we don't want in the world, showing that everything that we don't want to have happen. You're doing great. You're really laying it all out there. But the imagery of Prison Planet and InfoWars is it creates conflict and division, and also we're just highlighting on what we don't want. So it's can we, I asked him and implore him, can we have some discussions about what it is we do want? Can we start focusing our energy and our hearts and our minds and our voices on what it is that we do want, and working together towards achieving what we do want, working towards ideal outcomes, understanding the challenges, putting forward the challenges towards achieving those goals, and then enabling through radical collaboration this incredible global community of innovators and creators and coders and activists all around, and to be able to to come together as this lightning rod and do things that you'd say are impossible, but really it's not. We're in 2023, exponential technologies all around us. If the right group of social innovators come together, and if you have someone like Bobby Kennedy as a storm that also acts as a catalyst towards helping people, we can do things. And you said independence is that word, and I will say right now that we're working on something, I'm working on something with others on independence, towards bringing people towards creating a this third branch, but in a decentralized function, so that come November 5th, 2024, you'll be able to, just like the Republicans will, here's your down vote. Are you a Republican? Okay, here's who you should vote for. Well, are you an independent? Like, here's who we're suggesting you vote for after, like, going through our deliberative, iterative process. And we have oaths from all candidates saying, like, potentially saying that we will listen to whatever the hell people want. And like, let's open this up and let's choose a new path forward, as opposed to like even like listening to that, like that person we were talking about earlier. Like,
well,
nope.
unfortunately, that's my congressperson. So it's one of those things where if I don't use my platform to challenge her as my congressperson, it would be one thing if she weren't my representative. Then I'm bitching about someone else's representative. But that is, in fact, my representative. And she is also a representative of the Jewish community. And right now that is causing issues and it's causing problems for other people, which is then why I have to take issue with her. That's why I don't like talk about her like in a personal way. This has nothing to do, like, this isn't personal toxic nonsense, right? That's my congresswoman. And she puts out stuff like that. And that is not representative, not just of me, but anybody I know here. So if we don't speak out, then what?
It's fair.
It's
Kyle?
fair. And I would suggest, like, and she needs to have that heard. And the truckers did something really good. Like, you do it peacefully. You bring music, you bring vehicles, you light it up.
That doesn't always work. And I'll tell you, I was at Stop Cop City at the block action this past week in Atlanta. And I was marching in a big group of people that are singing songs like Love Is Our Strength. And they're literally carrying saplings to go plant in the forest. Okay. These are tree hippies, no weapons. Okay. And they're marching, and we're coming into contact with a whole full line of cops in riot gear, couple of tanks, helicopters flying over, and then they start tear gassing as soon as they get to the line. And it's like,
that just sounds like what that sounds like a terrible container.
It's dystopian. And so but I've seen it firsthand.
Wouldn't you guys want to, if you want to go plant trees, like, wouldn't you want to go towards like the fields or something?
Well, they're walking up towards the woods. And what's so screwed up about this is, I don't know how much you're knowing about Cop City, but
I don't know anything.
Yeah, it's a big deal anyway, what's going on in Atlanta. But their over militarization, it's like, it's so off the charts. And that's one of the things when we talk about things like, a lot of times when you're talking about cryptocurrency, and he knows this, I'm hearing whatever. And all of that decentralization stuff, and that's all fine and dandy. And I appreciate all of that. But if we don't talk about it hand in hand with the militarism that we are seeing across the board, it will not matter, because the military industrial complex is in charge of everything right now, everything. And so it's like, if we don't address that, how are we going to deal with anything else?
Yeah, that's a very fair point.
And we saw that in Canada with the truckers too. It's like, the Ottawa police, like, by the end, they were ready to break. Like, they were ready to be like, fuck this, we're out of here. And so then they had to, like, they needed to get their stormtroopers together. So they had to pull, like, based on the data, they pulled probably like the most aggro cops from all over. There's even some suggestions that they were bringing international kind of like forces to be there. And again, like, a lot of these people didn't have badges, they had identifier numbers, but it was like, that was it. It was literally stormtroopers,
yes,
like, coming in. And so, like, that's a real kind of issue. And but there's lots of ways to, like, creatively do this. And, like, one of the things that they don't like is a high vibration. And, like, one of the things, like, that threatened them about the Ottawa thing with the bouncy castles, the saunas, the dance parties until 4 o'clock in the morning every night, fireworks going off. Like, it was 17 days of Burning Man in Ottawa, codenamed Freezing Man. And then, so what do they need to do? They needed to get bring in the stormtroopers, bring in a horse. Like, that horse trampling, like, that was, I'll say it, that was like
about Canada. It's something
that was like right. that was done on purpose. Like, they want to get these horrible images. It's like, oh, we got an old lady, like, oh, that's a good one, because that
Well,
like
you know what? So this is something that these people get off on. So a few days before the event I was at, there were 4 of, they call them their community elders. They're 4 older women. One of them that I saw was in her 90s, and they were sitting in chairs on a public street, mind you, in front of this area, and they all 4 got arrested. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're a cop and you're arresting a 91-year-old granny, and they were knitting, by the way, and this is who you're arresting, how do you not think something went terribly wrong with your life? That somewhere along the line you've done something wrong. I don't understand how they can't see that as messed up.
I am of the belief that they are basically being given orders. It's not that they're doing this because they necessarily want to do it.
Then you need to find it. Then everybody with conscience needs to find a different line of work.
Well, you know what? That's easier said than done.
You got to reread your oaths too. Yeah. You've got to, like, it comes back to that, like, you know, and there's a lot of veterans too, and, like, you know, calling out the veterans out there, like, think about the oaths that you took, and then the actions that you took, and reflect, and were you actually serving your oaths? And by being removed from the system, like,
yeah,
are you satisfied? Because guess what? You're invited. You're invited to re-enter, re-engage, re-participate, reorganize, because we need warriors, and we need elders, and we need grandmothers and mothers and fathers and children, you know, we need all people to basically come together and say, I declare my independence. Let's pick a new path forward, and let's try and not, and this is it's going to be the difficult thing, but it's like, there's a lot of, like, thirst for vengeance, and that is not going to solve the problem. Like, the vengeance, and there are people, because there's a lot of people that are in the apparatus that were just kind of following orders and going along with things, and there are definitely certain people that are, you know, that deserve justice, but we need to find, you know, some sort of path. Like, you know, there was that guy, I think his name was Holloway. He was some sort of media personality who, like I think a couple weeks ago, went on Twitter and he declared that, well, you know, we should just get forgiveness because, you know, yeah, we overreacted a little bit. We're basically wrong about everything, but we were just trying our best. So you should forgive us. And it's like, dude, fuck off. Like, you can't say that. You can't say, I expect forgiveness. If you want forgiveness, you have to say, I'm sorry. I fucked up. I was out of line. I made mistakes. And then you say, please forgive me. I recognize my mistakes. I won't do it again. It's literally what you do with your children. And it's like, you know, this is the way we need to operate. We need to rise as children and adults and just have some understanding and compassion, but also know that it's okay to just say, I'm sorry. Fucked up. I made a mistake. I made lots of mistakes. And also, like, I'll own it too. And you know what? Here, let's give everybody a bloody whistle as well and blow your whistles. And, like, you know, because, you know, like, yeah, there's a lot of good people, but there's some really corrupted little agents. So blow your bloody whistles and, like, you know, and shine the light, because there's like money there's a data trail, there's data trail and there's money trails. And, like, you know, as soon as we focus in on that, as opposed to like, you know, right now they're trying to focus everyone on, how are you spending that $250, Jen? Like, is that legal? Like, no. Yeah. Let's focus the lens of surveillance on public spending, on public servant spending, on the lobbying connections.
I'm also interested in their insider trading. I would be very curious as to how much money our Congresswoman has profited since October 7th because of her intake from, she's Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, she has a few of them.
Oh my gosh, right?
So here's the thing.
Like, the conflicts of interest.
Oh, it's insane. This is one of the things. When Russia invaded Ukraine, she was like the number one, she had the number one return on investment within 3 months. She had like a 64 ROI. Because of, and she's on whatever committee she's on prior to that thing. So it's this insider trading thing. And and it's flagrant, and they won't even bring it to the floor to vote on it. whether or not they should be able, like,
well,
I
of
think if
course,
Congress
they're
should-
never going. Why would they ever bring it to
There's
bear?
a few of them that are willing, the ones who aren't corporate whores. There's a handful of them that are willing to do
Yeah,
that.
but they, like the collective they're never going to want that. This is a we the people thing that has to, like, you know, come about, and that's the challenge with the centralized party system, is they're not going to do it. And it's like, it's funny, like, you know, the once you know, influential and informative New York Times ran an article last week on Bobby Kennedy. It was like Bobby has used his disinformation campaign to make millions of dollars. Like, it's a bad thing. like he literally, like, they're like, he's made tens of millions of dollars.
Because that's what he's in it for, is
in
the
the
money.
past years. It's like tens of millions. Oh yeah, by being a lawyer,
An
suing companies like
lawyer.
an environmental lawyer suing companies like Monsanto and the EPA and like big regulatory agencies. And he wrote a book too. And guess what? It sold a ton of copies. Like,
He
okay,
actually
great.
sold. I mean, he sued the Navy. If I'm not mistaken, he actually sued the U.S. Navy. He went after. I cannot remember the case, but it was some sort. It was obviously an environmental issue. But
I was just in Puerto Rico. He was in jail in Puerto Rico for, like, you know, for doing like a blockade of Viejas, I think it was called, because they wanted to use like this beautiful island as a test zone.
We
for
need him to come
military
around
stuff.
on Israel. We need him to come around on the Israel talk. We need him to stop following Rabbi Shmuley. Okay, Rabbi Shmuley is not the best example to be following. There, I've invited him on the show. Not Rabbi Shmuley. I've invited Bobby on the show. I'd love to introduce him to some of the people at Jewish Voice for Peace. But I got to tell you, if he would get his head on right about that issue, he would see a surge in numbers that would be pretty significant.
I think Bobby could win the presidency if he could do that.
He needs to be right on that issue in order to.
I agree. And look, we did a you know, we had Charles Eisenstein do an open talk last week or 2 weeks ago on this. And I think, again, we got to come back to, like, this is like a giant dividing issue, and Bobby's message is to heal the divide. So right now it's like, you know, the whole sideisms game is like very divisive, and we need to think more critically about this and talking about ideal outcomes, shared humanity, vision, peace.
Hey, I agree with you. And like I said, I'd vote for, look, I have enough reason to say, oh, I can disagree with someone on this and still support them as a reasonable person. I do that all the time. I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is, in terms of a campaign strategy, boosting numbers, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that this is their line in the sand.
But if he comes around,
I'm just, and that was
I know, but it's like, who, like, if this is the line in the sand, like,
well, we are talking to genocide right now. So in all fairness, it's a pretty good line.
I know. There's another genocide going on too, and it's a pharmaceutical genocide that's been going on, which quite frankly is far larger than what's taking place here, like exponentially.
I do
larger.
Appreciate that he calls out Big Pharma. I do. Appreciate
but I just want to mention, and there are genocides. This is, again, just like COVID. Just like COVID, they flooded the zone, just like Ukraine. They flooded the zone with this information to get everybody all riled up and divided. Now, it is absolutely terrible what is happening and the way that people are being manipulated. The fact that there were like embedded reporters with it. Like, come back. I just asked, how? Just like 9/11. How? How did 3 buildings collapse?
There's a lot of very curious things. And actually, I was watching Max Blumenthal's report on this, and Max is extremely informed on this topic. And he was looking at a lot of the evidence from October 7th and looking at like the pictures and the stuff from the ground and putting together the conclusion that those things that were incinerated, like the cars and the people, those images that looked like they were in a volcano, basically, those incinerated images, that couldn't have been in a Hamas because they don't have that weaponry. Right. So there's certain things that can be factually ascertained at this point, and yet people are still making it be like it's teams.
If you can look at
there's facts.
Yeah, if you can look at what Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld said on September 10th, 2001, and not question every single narrative that the State Department puts out from that point forward. Forget what happened prior to that. The idea that you can have actual C-SPAN footage of the Secretary of Defense, who, let's be honest, it was him and Cheney that ran the country.
It's horrifying.
And the idea that he could make a statement of, in 2001, September 10th, 2001, the Pentagon has $2 trillion that they cannot account for. And the very next day, 9/11 happens. As far as I'm concerned, that's the red flag of all time red flags. And anything that has occurred ever since, in almost every instance, always question more. And that's
and then it's like, and the next day, like the place where all those records were kept got hit by a plane or missile or plane in the Pentagon, and then then World Trade Center. Exactly. So it's just, let's be careful and let's not rush to jumping to conclusions. And one of the things that I was disappointed with was Bobby's immediate pile on using the same generic language as everybody else. It was like almost like everybody had to make that, that initial like coping statement. So
last question.
He's very fascinated by the bus.
Yes.
This is his whole thing.
Well, no, I love the bus because I think it's the best. It's a traveling billboard. I think it's the most effective way to get people's attention.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, okay. So you're not too far.
Right down 75. Just take it all the way, hook it into Fort Lauderdale. That's where we are.
And we'll be coming down Art Basel, Miami. We've got an event called Hand Pies for Kennedy happening at the Wynwood Walls in Miami on the 7th or 8th or something like that.
December? Yeah.
No, December. We'll be Art Basel. Like, there are a million people descend from all over the world, culture, people. It's like party, nonstop parties everywhere, and everyone's like, it's one of those events like that's really kind of chic, but everybody's like, if they are somewhere, they're always just thinking of where's the next place you're going to be. It's always the next move. So there's all this transition. So this is like a perfect opportunity just for the bus to be out there rolling around, playing music, lights, lasers, camera, action, and, and inviting people in and doing fun little activations that are basically glitches in the matrix, and, and just generating, honestly, high grade, inviting impressions as opposed to boring corporate, paying the corporates to slew some lame ads to people. It's like, how do you create authentic engagement?
If we can stop by, we definitely will. Before you go, who's your pick for VP if you could pick it right now?
I mean, personally, I'm like, I go back to like Ron Paul. It's like not even Rand Paul. Like, let's go to the good old Dr. Ron Paul.
We need younger.
I know. But
it's like, just, it has to be. I mean, seriously, at this point, where I feel like DC is like a hospice.
Who would you like? Who do you like?
Jesse Ventura.
We like Jesse
recently.
Jesse Ventura. Okay, I haven't heard that one.
And he made a very valid point that he would be RFK's best insurance policy. He's like, because they definitely wouldn't want to assassinate him with me there. And he makes a very valid point, actually. So, but we like, and I do like Jesse. He's always been an independent, always, been independent.
I think it also gives Bobby a hell of a lot of credibility on the ticket, having not just an independent, but a former independent governor of a large state. That I think it would really add a very good juxtaposition. Granted, they're both around the same age, but to me, it really would be a very unique ticket. And there is a huge swath of the independent voting bloc on both sides, from the very political left to the very political right, that love Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, well, Jesse, because he's always been authentic and he's never hypocritical. He's consistent, and that's very, not easy to come by. And the fact that he did win a state race as an independent and has executive, experience, and then didn't run again, served his 4 years and could have easily won re-election and chose not to do that. And I find him to be very authentic.
I would think at the very least they should definitely
talk.
Like if Amarillo,
who would be some of the other candidates too? Like I'd love your feedbacks on other ones.
Well, it's not who I would pick, because obviously we have our differences about a number of things, and I do not like the way she has particularly handled the Israel situation, but a lot of people would like to see Tulsi as his VP. That's a name that's been floated a million times over.
I think she's a lightning rod now.
I think she's, yeah. I think on the surface it looks like a good ticket, but I'm not sure it would really move the needle. The question is, who would help the most? I mean, listen.
Especially with Tulsi, like if she can bring like the Hawaiian healing, like the Aloha and the Ho'oponopono to try and heal the divide, but yeah, the
She's
Fox
been
News
lately.
Give me a ticket.
I know. I was listening to the words too, and I was like, "What?"
See,
like,
that's
what?
not a good. And independents and people that are even more libertarian-minded don't like the war hawk.
If it was even possible, because I'm not convinced that Dr. West is going to get the ballot access. If you gave me an RFK West ticket, to me, that's.
But that would never happen, though.
Maybe not.
Dr. West would never.
It's why you got to throw it out into the ether and try to potentially make it happen. You never know. Who do you like besides Ron Paul?
Well, I mean, what about Vivek? I've been listening to this guy lately, and it's like I don't like. He's too good.
But you're looking within the party, I guess. I was thinking of people that weren't necessarily.
To be fair, no, I'll give Kyle credit. You know, the one thing you could say about Vivek is that he's another outsider independent who just happens to be running in the Republican primary, and he is saying a lot of things that are true. He's way too much on that venture capitalist level that I don't think is what needs to be connecting with everyday people right now.
Yeah, we need someone who can speak to labor.
Yeah.
You need
Sean
someone.
Fain.
Sean Fain.
There you go.
Although that's another one that we could put out in their ether, but I don't think Sean Fain would have any interest in that. But yeah, that would be pretty amazing.
Try it,
well,
Sean.
This is also the issue too. Is like we're talking about like these one individuals that really make it. It's like we need everybody to kind of rise up and we support. So it's like, you know, whether it's governor, Congress, Senate, it's like we need strong, good people to like not. Like don't need more independents running for the presidential ticket.
I agree. We need independents.
We need to come together behind Bobby and this storm and leverage it and like go put up a lawn sign that has, if you're running for Congress in your district, put Bobby on one side, put your face on the other, and say declare your independence, and like, you know, have a platform that says I'm going to listen to you, the people. I have my own opinions, but I want to listen to you. And I want us all to like actually like, you know, be sworn on this oath, and let's not like, you know, simplify things to, well, I'm pro or I'm anti or this or that. It's because that's just that pedantic, reductive, like, you know, that's the cage in which the system maintains its control.
It has been an absolute pleasure having you on. And
ditto.
Yes, and now, I mean, listen, I never would have guessed.
He's got bus envy. You know, let's be real.
Well, yeah, so we got to go to our Basil. Is it Basil?
Our Basil.
Basil.
But you have bus envy.
Our
I
Basil.
like it. I think great.
Bring a bus. I encourage you. Make an RV, paint it, come down, rent one, outdoorsy.com, ask your friends.
The campaign, or you just travel with them like a deadhead follow the dead?
No, now I'm with the campaign.
Okay, so basically you grew on them like a fungus, and then they just brought you on.
Well, again, I'll speak to this to anybody who wants to get involved. Like, prove yourself, take action, do stuff, as opposed to writing up a fancy proposal, like, you know, declaring all the stuff that you can do. Go out there and do and get it done and participate, volunteer, get involved. Go to kennedy24.com, click the volunteer button, show up on the Zoom calls, go out there, take photos, activate, invite, get involved in your local politics. Do whatever it is, like, you know, that you can do. Everybody has their own superpowers. Channel it, leverage it, and you know, again, and it's action as opposed to doing. And I'll say that even to anybody who wants to be a VP, it's action. It shouldn't be based on like how this would look.
Pick you.
Nah, I can't pick me.
No, I know you can't. I know you're disqualified.
Kyle,
not able to.
Kyle, how can people follow your work if they would like to check out the bus or just anything that you're doing on the campaign?
Yeah, so it's at Kennedy24bus on Instagram, and then I'm Kyle Kemper on Twitter. That's it.
Kyle, thank you so much.
Thanks for chatting with us.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You as well. Blessings to all.
do you celebrate Thanksgiving now or last month? Because now I have to know. Because now you're Canadian.
I'm down here. I mean, I'm here, so of course I'm celebrating it.
All right.
Of course. I mean, if you're in Canada, you celebrate it in October, but
Right, that's I know.
and that's because guess what? It's a little bit different up there. It's snowing now, so we're not in harvest anymore.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, thank you guys. Keep on shining. Let's go.
Appreciate it, brother.
RFK all the way. That's what they say. Have a great day.
You too, man. I'll see you. See, that's a fun conversation.
Energy, high
And
energy.
even though-
high energy.
And even though we don't agree, and I want to double back to what You Don't Like My Music said, which is this whole thing about what is the supposed political affiliation of the truckers. I don't care what it is. All I care about is that they made a decision as workers that
They stood for what they stood for.
We're not having this. And so the state...
It has to do with their group's action based on what their group wanted. And really, people outside of that, it's not our business.
No, it's not. And
that's
so,
the thing. It's the workers' position to take against their owners.
And so here's a little reveal that we weren't going to mention. Only Jen and I knew about this during the talk, but we'll say it now because
what do we know? What do we know?
That was Justin Trudeau's brother.
Well, anybody else could have gone and looked it up when he told us to Google him.
They may be been able to do that, but
yeah, he was Justin Trudeau's brother.
So talk about being on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, if you're talking about the world leader that was the most controversial throughout the course of the pandemic, I think it's fair to say you could definitely make the argument that Trudeau was definitely at the top.
To me, my problem with him, and this is only based on political things, it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
I kind of think of him as like white Obama.
Well, it's kind of, I guess you would say like he's an advanced version of Buttigieg.
He's not like, because Buttigieg is like mealy and me, whereas Obama really knew how to walk it and talk it see, that was the thing. He did it. Buttigieg could never get to that point. Yeah. He doesn't have anywhere near that cool.
Well, Obama.
I never saw anybody more cool and collected ever.
The crazy thing about it is that, we get some very interesting guests on this show. And now Justin Trudeau's administration is going to be made aware of us because we just had his brother.
That doesn't mean, for all we know, they're estranged and don't even talk.
Oh no, I'm sure they're very they're well aware of each other's activity.
I don't know that. I don't know how you know that. There are siblings that don't even know what each other do. They don't have the same last name. Who knows how close they are? I don't know.
You're right.
You don't know. Possible. You know nothing as to how close they are.
You're right. I know nothing.
You know nothing. But it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter.
They have to. All right. So I think they're half.
Yes, obviously.
So Margaret Trudeau, they have the same mom.
They have the same mom.
But
I could have done that with the last names. I could have done the math for you if you.
Well, for those of you who don't know, the Trudeau family is literally royalty in Canada. Like this is not.
But is it because of the Trudeau name?
Yes.
So then, right.
Yes.
So then that's what his mom is married to, and is Justin Trudeau's father. Not his father.
Colonello, and even if that's the case.
This is not the point, man.
Even if that's the case, I still support their right to bodily autonomy. You know that wonderful thing that we like to talk about?
We don't do bans and mandates.
We don't.
We're not for bans and mandates.
Nope.
Live and let live, man.
Yep. And if there's one thing that the pandemic proved above everything else, the people who needed to take the vaccine were people that were in vulnerable health categories. And unfortunately, in this country, we got quite a few people in those categories.
That's because we have no health care.
We don't. That's the kicker. And when you're in Canada, and you do have health care, and they're still bringing the hammer down on you, I can understand why so many Canadians were livid over what was happening.
Yeah, we don't have health care. We have health industry.
At least here in the United States, people are willing to question that much more so than they are north of the border. And so for anybody who's there.
But you know what they have in Canada that we don't have in a lot of places here?
There's a lot of things they have in Canada that they don't have here. They do have moose. Oh, we don't have moose in the United States?
We do. I have to go. Well, I tried to find the moose. That was one of the reasons I went to Maine and New Hampshire. No, it's there, but no. So my next track to find the moose, because I didn't see the moose when I was up in the place to find the moose. But the next place I'm going to go find the moose is in northern Minnesota, which of course butts up right against Canada, and there is moose there. That's the closest place, like seriously. And I mean original moose. None of that Colorado imported moose. because I'm not counting that. If you have to, and I'm all for moving species and helping change, like that's all great. But I want to see original moose, not imported moose.
60 years ago today was one of the darkest days in the history of our country, for obvious reasons.
Boy, our bar is so up there now, man. Like
Yeah.
we don't even like. Can you imagine that was such a big deal? Like, I don't
Imagine if you had a leader in this country like JFK today.
You
Now I
couldn't.
know people are going to say RFK Jr. and all that. Listen, if you just
You
we're going to
can't.
play a clip for you now.
But do you know why you can't? Because it isn't him. I mean, yes, he was a good candidate, and I understand that you have
Sure.
appreciated. It's also the complete control of media that now you just do not have that. There's too much independent. There's too much. Everybody is watching. Everybody's a journalist. So a lot of the story and the narrative is never going to be able to be that pure again. And that is a big part of the legacy of that is this narrative of Camelot that was not real. And so I don't think somebody could happen like that again, even if they were a great candidate, because nobody believes in fairy tales anymore.
Well, this was a fairy tale candidate that made it
I
into the
know.
White House. And we're going to play a clip for you in honor of
In honor of
Jack's-
the anniversary of death,
Jack's
Death-iversary.
unfortunate, which is still being
assassination anniversary.
which is still being debated today, although there shouldn't be any debate. We all know that he was trying to do things that the powers that be didn't want, and they took his life for it. So here we go.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. They are not yet freed from the bonds of injustice. They are not yet freed from social and economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Where the separation of church and state is absolute. Where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act. And no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote. Where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference. And where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him, or the people who might elect him.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Or something. Yeah. So the chatter, of course, in the chat, but I actually agree that I don't think that he necessarily was not going to have Vietnam. Like, I don't agree that that's a thing. And I don't think that's why he got dead. I think he got dead because he challenged the deep state and he wanted to take power away. And he also fired Allen Dulles. And I think that you screw with the Dulles brothers, you get dead.
If there's one, if you want to point the finger at one person and one person only that is responsible for Jack's assassination, I would point it at Allen Dulles. He would be number one.
That, and I also think that Johnson. Look, I mean, and for me, in any case like that, you always look at who has the most to gain from any scenario, and obviously,
all historic information has suggested that Johnson was going to be dropped from the ticket at the Democratic convention.
That doesn't surprise me. And I think that. Who knows? He probably got together with like the Dulles brothers and was like, yeah, I'm all for that war. If you put me in, I'll escalate. I'll escalate.
Well, here's the thing. There's been, again, how much of it is accurate, one can only guess, because ultimately everyone has their way of exaggerating the truth. LBJ had a mistress who was very tight-lipped for most of her life, but at the end decided that she was going to tell her side of the story, which involved talking about a meeting at a very wealthy oil baron's home the night before the assassination, and more or less was privy to this idea that, yes, something's going to happen to Kennedy tomorrow. And this came directly from LBJ's mouth. Now, is it hearsay? Who knows? But if you look her up, I think her name was Madeline Brown, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure that's her name.
Oh, we're so going to get demonetized. So in one episode, we've sat here and
we're not saying it's true.
Talked about Debbie, and now we're talking about the JFK.
Hey, listen, we have a video clip of Debbie that we can play if you really want to try to get demonetized.
No. But I still want to get the ones of her that I think I would love to be able to push the button and have it be like, no.
Well, so what is
patrons?
So what is the legacy? What is the legacy of Jack and the Kennedys as a whole?
You shouldn't call him Jack.
Okay, of JFK.
I feel like that's just way too familiar. You always refer to him as Jack like you're a friend.
Okay, excuse me. I'm
just saying.
You
it's
say
very
it
familiar.
you do it to try to insult me.
No,
yes,
but you say Jack
yes,
like
you
you're
do.
buddies.
Yeah, you do.
I don't. I say it because it's awkward to me that you're referring to him like you know.
Okay,
him.
so former President, now deceased, Kennedy, what is his legacy?
But I also feel weird calling Kennedy Bobby. Like, I feel like that's very familiar.
Maybe so. Well, he's not president yet.
It doesn't matter. I don't know him well enough to just go up to him and say, hey, Bobby.
I think John F. Kennedy's legacy.
See, it's like, because it's true. It's like that's what
that's
what his wife and family would refer to him as. Like,
maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It is.
Maybe they call him John Fitz.
Maybe they call him Fitzy.
So for Fitzy and his legacy, it was a great presidency unrealized. Many of the things that he was fighting for,
Ted Cruz's dad,
did not come to fruition.
It's all Ted Cruz's dad's fault.
I don't think Oswald, if he had anything to do with it, he was a patsy. There's way too much evidence.
He was just he is a patsy. I mean, he obviously was involved with whatever organization to the extent that he was at the place that he needed to be to take the fall for whatever it was. So he was clearly somehow involved. He wasn't random. He didn't just happen to be there. He was clearly involved. But
he was what he knew, CIA.
Right? Like what he knew and why he was like, we'll never know.
Well, one thing that is always got to be put into historical context is anybody who's ever paid attention to political assassination throughout history. Anyone who commits an assassination of a world figure has always admitted the deed. Always. That's never been in denial, except for Lee Harvey Oswald, who said he was a patsy. I did not shoot the president. I am just a patsy. If you look at anybody else who's either
you don't even have to listen to that. Really, the forensic evidence speaks for itself.
Correct.
It's absurd.
It's everything.
It's absurd.
Again, and you don't like my music. You're assuming that you're taking you're taking information about the assassination of J.D. Tippit and that it was done by Oswald. That's never been firmly established. And even if that were the case, everything is...
So because he kills one person, he must have killed the other?
Well, of course, again, everything is all... There are ways to create narratives. There are ways to create situations, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which started the Vietnam War, yet was proven to be a complete hoax, fabrication. And it wasn't the Vietnamese that sank the ship, but it was our own doing that made it happen.
Sort of like what we're seeing now in Israel. That's kind of the kind of shit that comes up.
You know what eventually
we
is
find
gonna,
those
sure,
things.
This is what's going to happen. This is going to be the legacy of however much longer, God willing, we can try to bring an end to this, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Israel has their intentions as far as what they're trying to do in Gaza.
Clearly.
It is going to be brought to even greater light that what is happening right now is the result of very intricate planning by the Israeli government to make sure that Hamas was able to do what they did to give them the opening they needed to do what they're now doing.
I mean, at a minimum, I think it's like 9/11, where they at least knew something was coming. They knew it was going to happen. They have no problem, forsaking their own people, none whatsoever. Again, human shields. The fact that the most highly surveilled concentration camp in the world by one of the most, highest ranked militaries in the world, and the people are having a music festival right near there, weren't even safe to do so. I would suggest that having people in places that are unsafe is kind of like using human shields. But it is somewhat hard to think that it did happen without any knowledge. But I think that about 9/11 too. I think that when you have militaries that have the intelligence and the level that we have reached at this point of surveillance, that to think something like that could happen and that it would take so long to respond to it is also very, very weird to me. There's things about it that are weird. What Max said also speaks true to me.
There's also, the other thing to circle back on, and you have to remember this about JFK's assassination, is there's way too many coincidences associated with his assassination, not the least of which is the fact that for sure, based on forensic evidence, that there was more than 3 shots fired. And if that is the case, that means that based on forensic evidence, that there was at least 2 guns. That's a fact. So you want to know how I can prove that there was more than...
Jesse wrote a whole book on this.
He did.
Yeah, because this is one of his big things that he's investigated, as has Oliver Stone.
It's all been established that the first shot missed. It's all been established that the second shot hit Kennedy in the throat. It has all been established that there had to have at least been a 4th shot aside from the headshot that killed him. How do I know this for a fact?
Because it didn't go in turn around in midair like a loogie.
Even if you believe in the magic bullet theory, even if you believe that that's possible, that the second bullet, which pierced Kennedy's neck and somehow hit 8 different spots between himself and Governor Connolly, you still cannot not account for the bullet fragment that hit the pavement and pierced the face of James Tague. There's your 4th shot. So you can even have the magic bullet theory and you still can't account for the 4th shot. That's a conspiracy. And that's just the beginning.
Oh, we're so going to get demonetized.
That's just the beginning, because it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 3. It's like a dozen to 15 eyewitnesses that mysteriously disappeared and ended up dead over the course of just a couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. That's what happened. That's when stuff like that happens, that's when you know that it's like deep state stuff.
Jack Ruby, who was directly connected to the Chicago outfit, commits murder on national television. No one does that unless they're told to do it. The fact that his brother was assassinated when he tried to run for president. Yeah. The fact that his son has been going on every major political podcast and saying, and I quote, "I know who shot my father and it wasn't Sirhan Sirhan." Or that if
But it's never going to change that.
No.
I need to go eat.
There's too many coincidences for it not to be true.
And I need to cook.
I understand. I won't keep you.
I have dinner that I have to start for
I
tomorrow.
think we all
today.
agree that the legacy of JFK, smartass, is one of a president that attempted to do great things and inspired many people,
We did great things. I'm for good things.
and against bad things.
I'm for good things, and I'm against bad things.
I miss his words. I listen to them every so often. I think his speech that he gave at American University, if you've never heard it, about Pax Americana,
I know. I'm trying
is
to
one
go
of the
eat.
great ones that we've ever had. Is definitely something to hear. And, he was one of our great leaders and was only there for 3 years. But in the 3 years that he served our country as the commander-in-chief, I think he did as good a job as anybody could have done in the circumstances. And just the fact that he prevented nuclear war, and he really did prevent nuclear war. There is no question that his bargaining with Premier Khrushchev, as well as with dictator Castro, allowed us to avoid World War III and pretty much the end of civilization. And that's among many other great things that he did. But that's a legacy that can never be denied. And
Again,
like
the
I
opinions
said-
of Peter Hager are his opinions.
Oh,
Do
you
not
don't
reflect.
agree.
I honestly no. I'm not like a fangirl of Kennedy. I think that to me, they're all the same.
Yeah, he was also a floozy, but
No, I don't care about that. Like, that's not it. I don't have reverence. I think that I just don't. I don't have reverence.
Well, I have reverence. even if
Okay,
you
so
don't.
then have reverence.
I guess we can't all agree on everything.
No, but I do
You're
have to go, and I
You're
have
not
to
going
cook.
yet. You have one more thing that we have to talk about.
Really, I really need to go and do my stuff. What
I
is
know
it?
you do.
Okay.
So those of you who have obviously been paying attention to what's been going on with Susan Sarandon, she was fired from United Talent Agency the other day. Why was she fired? Well, apparently she decided that it was important to support the rights of Palestinians, which did not sit well. And she wasn't the only person who got dropped from a job. You also have Melissa Barrera,
I
who
don't know who that is.
she's apparently the star of the new Scream movie, Scream 7. They're up to 7 with Scream now. So yeah, these two individuals decided that they were going to speak out, regarding what was happening.
Yeah.
And they have now been released from their job. But I obviously wanted to highlight Susan Sarandon because she is somebody who has always spoken out on behalf of the downtrodden, the working class. And one thing that we've noticed recently, in particular, when it comes to everything that's going on in light of what's happening in Gaza, is that censorship has been taken up to an 11. If you even attempt to speak out against what's happening in the Middle East right now, you are grounds to be terminated from your job.
That's what I read too. Highly recommend Devil's Chessboard. Anyway, very good recommendation. Sorry. And it is not easy knowing.
Susan Sarandon obviously is very well off. She's worth tens of millions of dollars. She's one of the most successful actresses of the last 50 years. Oscar winner, something that Deborah Messing will never be. I always like.
So again, I really don't like talking about celebrities. I really don't. I know.
But I just
really
like to point
don't.
that out because I really don't like her.
Okay.
But
this is really good for a pontificating.
Yes, it's good for pontificating, but it also speaks volumes to what Susan has been about for so very long. And even in the face of losing her representation, I'm sure she'll find something else.
She doesn't give a shit.
Do you know that Susan's 77?
Good.
She's still out there kicking ass and taking names. But this Melissa Barrera apparently is the star, was like the top billed actor in the next Scream movie. And because she said that Palestinians deserve human rights, she has been removed from her next film.
It's just like a red scare.
But this really just goes to show you how Israel's position is unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, they'll run out of people to ban and censor, and it'll just be, you'll have people like, I don't know, Amy Schumer, just like by herself in a little bubble of Zionism. Be happy in there, Amy.
Somebody, I don't remember who it was that brought it up, but a very good point. You have Susan Sarandon and Melissa Barrera lose their jobs.
I know, Alan.
For speaking up. I'll be done in a minute. Why do you have to do that?
Because he said.
I don't care. But no, now you're just trying to be a pain in the ass.
Well, because I told you I was.
I said, just give me a minute.
Okay.
So Melissa Barrera and Susan Sarandon lose their job for saying that Palestinians deserve human rights. Yet Sarah Silverman says that it's okay to cut off water to Gaza, and she's hosting the Comedy Central's Daily Show.
I would never watch that swill anyway. That swill hasn't
been
good
since John left.
Since Jon Stewart left, it's been nothing.
But that also speaks to this idea of what we've been saying, and this is where the conversation comes full circle about Wasserman Schultz, and how if you want to know why anti-Semitism gets drawn up to a 12 and beyond, it's because of these actions. It's because of the actions of Stuart Selbowitz. It's because of the actions of Amy Schumer and Deborah Messing and Sacha Baron Cohen. It's because there is this, you could call it a conspiracy, you could call it whatever you want, but that there is basically immunity granted to Jewish celebrities to do whatever the hell they want, and anyone who speaks out against the state of Israel for their genocidal actions, you are now subject to losing your job.
Well, because you're anti-Semitic.
Of course. Well, isn't everybody?
Well, and I also am one that believes that, well, again, I'm not averse to hate speech. I think people should be able to say whatever they want to say. So I don't believe in censorship.
Neither do I.
So that's just that.
But we support them and we support their efforts. And thank you for always standing on the side of justice, which is what, unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid to do even today. If you are not currently a patron, please go to patreon.com/generational change, as low as $5 a month. Yes, of course I did. And let everybody know we are very appreciative for your support. If you are so inclined, $25 donation will get you the Generational Change jersey. If you would like to not put your credit card on the grid, but you would like to contribute to our small but mighty channel, we ask you to go over to Cash App, and there, $GenChange. You can make a contribution for however amount you would like, but any amount will certainly be appreciated. We are currently monetized. Jen is of the mind that we're going to be demonetized again very quickly.
We
decided to call out Debbie again. We all know what usually happens.
We called out Debbie and talked about the JFK conspiracy in one show. Those are both targets for demonetization. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well. Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you all. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things we ask you to do. Have a great holiday weekend. We'll see you Monday.